Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, in these nights of Muharram, the nights of mourning, it's good for us to be gathered once again, and I hope everyone is well. When we look at the nights of Muharram, often we take a moment to ponder upon the ashab, the companions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And I think this is one of those nights, or one of those topics that people can relate to more, because even though this idea is not correct, but people say that person was an infallible, and I can never get to that infallible, so how can I relate? That's not a correct idea. But because of that, people sometimes relate more to the companions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. One of the topics that arises when we look at the lives of these great companions, these companions who, as we know, no other Imam was given these type of ashab, these type of companions. The question that arises, the issue that arises, is that of freedom in my life. As I understand, as we know, as is our belief, I was created as a person who was free. But one of the issues and one of the concepts that is discussed when it comes to Karbala is freedom. In Islam, am I told to be someone who is free? Now this is a very vast topic, politically, socially, with regards to my beliefs, with regards to my practices. Is there freedom or no? Am I someone who has to follow certain things? Politically, does Islam allow freedom? Can people accept what they want to accept and deny what they wish to deny? What do we think about this issue of freedom in Islam in general, or freedom in light of what we were taught by Imam Hussain alayhi salam?
Shaykhna, the concept of freedom, if I'm given permission by my respected brothers to speak first, there are two ways to look at it, from the Islamic perspective and from the Western perspective that most people see it through, especially being born and raised in this country. You see it from this other lens. And that freedom, in my opinion, is an illusion. It doesn't exist. Concept is a false concept. So when most people think about freedom, and the first thing that comes into their mind about being free, about all of this, it doesn't exist. Freedom of speech and all of that. I don't believe that they have understood fully the concept, or the manifestation of the word is incorrect, or the dictionary definition is incorrect. One of those things is, there's a problem with the whole concept of freedom when we look at it from the Western lens. That's
freedom in general, so not just government
everything.
And political.
I'll go into more detail, but I'm very interested to see if anybody has any other opinions.
I mean, the Quran mentions very clearly, and we often quote this, La ikraha fi d-din. There's no compulsion in it. We'll discuss this inshallah more. But does it make sense for freedom to be part of religion?
Because the religious freedom is different. That's the thing that I'd like to get into. But first, I wanted to bring it from the lens that most people see it from, which is the Western lens. And I think that it's a false concept. I mean, I don't know, do you agree with me? Do you not?
Yeah, I do. I think freedom is the freedom of speech and all that stuff, the terms that are being thrown out at us, is a disguise. It's disguised, and it's not really freedom. It's a way for people to blasphemize, in a way, because, you know, all these media outlets and cartoons, even not adult cartoons, but cartoons that are played at peak times, not necessarily for kids, Simpsons and, you know, all these ones. And they really take the mick, if I can say that, when it comes to religion, God. And if somebody was to argue, say, what are you talking about? They would say, freedom of speech, man. You know, we can say it.
If I was to ask you, are you free? As a human being, are you free?
I like to believe so.
Cool. Does that mean you can do what you want?
No.
Why?
Because, I feel we have to be restricted by laws and regulations for our safety and security, for the entire society as a whole, for it to function. Because if I was free to do anything, whatever my desire or temptation, I would end up in the wrong place.
That's why freedom doesn't exist in that sense that they portray it as. See, it's like yin and yang, you know, light and dark. One doesn't exist without the other. So freedom cannot exist in that sense without restraint. Because how do you measure it then? Where do you draw the lines? There are certain groups of people who are spoken against in the media, for example, Muslims, and anybody who says anything, no, this is freedom of speech. Yet there are certain historical events that happened, for example, in the 30s and 40s, And people are not allowed to question that, not even through freedom of speech, because of anti this and anti that, and you know what I mean. So where do you draw the lines? How has this become? Where's the freedom? Is that not freedom?
The thing is, when it comes to freedom, you mentioned terms being thrown out, and you mentioned freedom being just a concept they try to tell people. You know, alongside these terms that we have of freedom is this term of censorship. Now, censorship, where do we place the censorship? Now, we can obviously see that censorship is placed wherever they want to place it.
Yes.
So, for example, if someone wants to talk about a specific thing, and as you said, you would come and ask why, they would say freedom of speech. Now, let's say the opposite thing, and you say, well, freedom of speech, no, this is censorship. You can't say this, because this should be censored. You don't, yes, there is freedom of speech, yes, there is freedom, but at the same time, they're giving you that limit. Now, once you put limit to freedom, freedom is supposed to be infinite, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, once you put the limit, then
it stops existing.
it stops existing.
That's my.
There's no such thing as freedom.
So we have the two types of things. One is what we call bil-quwwa, and the other is what we call bil-fi'l. A person is studying to become a doctor. Bil-quwwa, potentially he's a doctor. He has the potential to become a doctor. Bil-fi'l, right now he isn't. So maybe we can differentiate between freedom bil-quwwa and freedom bil-fi'l. The human being, as you said, I asked you, you said we have the potential to do whatever I want. Bil-fi'l, no. I have certain restrictions, I have certain guidelines that have been placed. Islam comes and says, primarily, let's look at this verse, La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. Why can religion not have this ikrah? Why does it not make sense for someone to be forced to believe a certain thing?
Because that would go against the notion of free will. If somebody didn't have the potential to, if there was no freedom for that person to choose an alternative path, whether it's the right one or the wrong one, but they have that choice of going astray, and then they will be able to be judged according to their options and the choices that they made.
So it doesn't make sense in a belief system for someone, as you were saying, to be forced.
Because if they were forced, then when they are judged for their actions, they can easily say that it wasn't them that did that, and they were forced to do such a thing.
There wouldn't be a need for heaven or hell then?
Of course.
It wouldn't make sense.
See, there is this word aqidah, or belief, which comes from the root aqd. So when someone recites a nikah, for example, this is called aqd, contract. Or there is, in buying and selling, there's a contract that I can recite. Why? Because aqd originally means what? Knot. I tie a knot. When a nikah is recited, those that are married, they know, there's a knot tied. Not a real knot, but now, this is it. Me with this person. In the same way, when I buy a certain thing, that thing is now with me, and the money is with that person. A knot is tied. In the same way, aqeedah comes from the tying of a knot. Why? Because when I believe in something, whether I like it or not, it becomes a part of me. It's not possible for me to come and tell you, it's daytime, for example, it's not possible for me to come and tell you that believe it's nighttime. When you can see outside that it's daytime, wherever, that's a knot on your heart. Wherever I will tell you, 50 people will come and say it's nighttime. No. That is to do with belief. Belief, therefore, is something that cannot be forced. For example, if I was to meet a certain person and you told me that I force you to hate this person, because hate and love and these things are part of belief, are part of my soul, no one can force me. No matter how much I try, if I like that person, I like them. Therefore, beliefs is not something that can be put under this barrier or this banner of ikrah, forcing someone to believe this or forcing someone to not believe it. At the end of the day, whatever I believe is part and parcel of my soul. I can't change it. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came and said, religion, deen, is not something to do with force. When I myself see the light on this path, I'll believe in it. If I don't see that light, I won't believe in it. Here, one question that arises with regards to La ikraha fi din, I have been asked as well by people that were practicing, people that believe in the wilayah of Ahlulbayt alayhim as-salam. One person was speaking a few years ago, and he said, why am I told I have to fast? Why am I told I have to pray? Why am I told I have to do Hajj once? I said, what do you mean? Quran mentions all of these things. He said, haven't you heard? La ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion in religion. That means that I can do what I want. Is that correct?
No.
Why?
Shahan, this is why I started with talking about the Western lens of what freedom is, which is what this brother is looking at the concept through. He needs to remove that lens and he needs to put on his Islamic lens and understand what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Humans, the way that we are made, we can talk about our fitrah, our primitive nature. We have in our system somehow the way we work is we have this kind of trait where we become slaves to something. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Now you see a lot of people with their phones in their hands all the time. They've become a slave to that thing. All right, I'm using the word slave and I'll tell you why in a moment. Or they're a slave to money. They go and they work and they work and they work and that's become their main focus. That's their focus, is to get money. So they become slaves to that. Or any other kind of thing that they look for in life, in the materialistic world. Now, in Islam, if we stop being a slave to all these things, we have to still be a slave to something because it's in our nature, right? Now, when you become a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is where true freedom comes in because you become free of becoming a slave from all these materialistic things that you were a slave to before. You've submitted. And the reason I use the word slave is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the best of His creations in the Holy Quran, He calls them the abdi. He always uses that word. Now, a slave doesn't ask his master, why do I have to pray? The slave doesn't ask his master, why do I have to go to Hajj once? He does what he's told. And through that, he achieves real freedom.
You know, especially when your master is one who always wants good for you.
Ahsant.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as our master, would always want, so I really agree with you on that point, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always wants the best for us. And therefore, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell us to do something, we definitely know that is something good. I heard a alim one day, he was talking to me, and we were talking about this whole istihbab and ikrah things in
recommended
religion.
And that which
Yes,
is not recommended.
which is recommended, which is not recommended. He said these are literally health guidelines for us. And honestly, when we look at specific points when it comes to stuff which are mustahab and stuff which are makruh, stuff which are recommended and stuff which are not, we find that within them there is always maslaha, as we would say in Arabic. So benefit for us. And of course, like you mentioned, our master would always want the best for us.
The example I give is no one is forcing you to enter into the masjid. Whether you want to enter, whether you don't want to, or into the majlis. Once you enter, you have to follow the rules of the masjid. You have to follow the rules of the Hussaini.
Subscribe to a certain belief.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to follow what this belief has.
And you can't be without any belief or without any structure. Like, for example, here in any country, I have the freedom to vote for who I want to. But at the end of the day, when that person is elected, I can't say I'm free. Don't give me rules on taxation and fiscal. No.
Of course, because it's your subscription, your choice. You've actively participated.
And we have to have guidelines.
So in the materialistic world, there is not that thing of that ultimate freedom that they're looking for, that they've been looking for in movies, in television shows, in history, in crusades, in everything.
Because if you had ultimate freedom, you'd have
Ahsan.
chaos.
But the ultimate
If I
freedom
wanted
is
to do
found
whatever I like to do, then I would
through Allah.
go and oppress people. I would go
Ahsan.
and do what I like,
No
what my worldly
guidelines.
desires push me towards. You'd break laws, you'd break ethical and moral ideas. These things, you can't have this in a
But you can have
in a
spiritual
society.
freedom.
Of course.
Yeah.
So does that mean I have freedom in certain things and I'm not free in other things?
Yes.
We're not talking about religious here, for example. So what am I free in?
I'm free, for example, I have the freedom now to go to the park, to go to work, to do all of these things. There's nobody restraining me from my house. I'm free to do all these things. But there are other things that I'm not free from. I have to pay my taxes. I have to do certain obligations on a daily basis.
But do you have to? I don't pay my taxes then.
But there are certain repercussions to not doing it.
Okay, but that doesn't mean I have to.
Yeah. I see where
Well, if you're an organized person, then you do have to.
The way I think is best to understand it, whether the hadith I'm about to say is about religious freedom, whether it's about freedom in my actions to do what I want, freedom in this world, is Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. When we have heard, he was asked, is insan free, is the human being free? What did he say? He said, lift up your right leg.
Yeah, I was thinking about that actually. Yeah.
He did it. Now lift up the left one at the same time. Can you do it? No. This is how free you are. I'm free to do what I want. I'm free to eat what I want. I'm free to go where I want. However, sometimes society puts restrictions. Sometimes family put restrictions. Sometimes culture puts restrictions. But as you have mentioned, the best restriction is that which is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, we see that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala especially emphasizes on freedom, this is the freedom of belief. Because it cannot be that I believe in something when someone else tells me to do so. That's why we have been told that taqleed, to emulate a certain person in usuluddin, in my beliefs, is not allowed. Here there's an issue with regards to this. One type of belief is what we call the primary belief. Belief in the existence of God, tawheed, oneness, infallibility of prophets, why I need these type of beliefs. The second type of group of beliefs are secondary beliefs. Like what? Like the belief that when I will die, during the time that my soul is being removed from my body, I will see the Imam alayhim as-salam in front of me. This is the belief we have. Here the scholars differentiate between doing taqleed in the first and doing taqleed in the second. In other words, when it comes to a foundation of my religion, tawheed, anbiya, ma'ad, all of these things, I can't do taqleed. Why? Because we said no one can force me to believe something. If a child is forced to believe a certain thing, he may think he's believing in it. At the end of the day, in his heart, that knot hasn't been tied. The second type of beliefs, however, that, for example, the imams will come to me when I die. That, for example, the Anbiya alayhim salam were from a certain part of the world. That A'imma alayhim salam were from Banu Hashim, which was the best of all tribes. All of these secondary types of beliefs, that Amir al-Mu'mineen will come to me in my grave to protect me from the punishment. In these beliefs, I can do taqleed. So I can say, I believe that when I die, I will see Amir al-Mu'mineen in front of me because Alim X told me. Because Alim Y told me. Why? Because that does not have the same effect as doing taqleed in the first case does. So when we say insan is free in his fundamental beliefs, which then will have a knock-on effect into the way in which he lives his life. I am free to choose which path I want, and that path, as we said, has certain consequences. But as you said Amir, it can't be that I have no path and I have no structure and I have no restrictions in this world. And so I think when this discussion comes of freedom of speech, or as you said, the West bring out this issue of freedom, that type of freedom cannot be present. Is that what we agree upon?
And at times, this type of freedom is politicized. It's done with an agenda. It's being pushed and pulled and put and not put in ways that benefit certain groups, organizations, and people. Sure. Now, if it's such a principled issue, it should cover and protect everybody, but not a mix and match type of thing that applies for one scenario, one group, and then doesn't apply for another. So if it was a principled thing, it would be consistent, but it obviously isn't.
Someone once asked me, we accept that my main beliefs I choose. It can't be that someone chooses my beliefs for me. However, someone told me, why can't I say at the end of the day, I have an aql that Allah has given me, an intellect. The person his beliefs weren't correct. He said, let's put the Quran, na'udhu billah, to the side, ahkam to the side, and I will come up with my own set of laws of how I saw it fit to live my life in this world.
Based on what?
Based on my intellect, based on the freedom that Allah has given me. And at the end of the day, he said to me, at the end of the day, we'll say, yes, Ya Allah, you gave us this Quran, but this is what my aql told me is correct. In other words, I don't want to be bound in the area of amal and action by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I accept His beliefs. However, at the end of the day, when I was given this intellect and this free will, let me be free. Let me choose whether I wish to do this thing called Hajj. Let me be free to eat the type of meat that I want. Because it's not fair, na'udhu billah, for me to be restricted in this way. So people ask this question a lot, how is this fair? You say that this is not allowed in ahkam and this is allowed. This is restricting the human being. The human being should be free. I was told in this society they can eat what they want. They can drink what they want. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restricting me? Once we have understood that freedom is present in the area of Iman and belief, does there need to be freedom in the area of Amal and action?
I think this goes back to what Sayyid Ali was talking about earlier, of the slave and the master. And he said the master, and then I added on to say that he wants the good for his slave. And of course, so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we mentioned before, when he restricts us from certain, so for example, from certain types of food.
Yeah.
Now, us, we don't need, I think in a previous discussion, you mentioned this thing about alim saying you don't have to, someone asked why.
Yeah.
And he says, just me knowing that it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I don't need to ask why. Or if it comes from Ma'asum, I don't need to ask why. Because we know that, as for the Ma'asumin, we know that their knowledge is from the Prophet, whose knowledge is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the best for us. Now, later on, when scientists do come out with their new investigations, let's say, we do find out with certain stuff which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has restricted us from, we find that there is better things for us. In health benefits, of course. So, yes, there needs to be that restriction. Maybe it allows us to be more free.
This type of freedom that I spoke about, of action, the first culprit who had this type of thinking was, of course, Iblis, Shaitan. Why? And this is the issue. This is when this thing is present, it causes destruction, arrogance. When I think I know better how to act in my life than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan, what does he do when Allah says, Usjudu li'adamah? Do sajda, prostrate. What did he say? Bihar mentions Bihar al-Adwar. He said, Ya Allah, put that aside. Like these people said, put your Sharia aside. I'll do something, I'll do this act of worship to you that no one has done before.
But Mawlana, Allah wants you to worship Him the way He wants you to worship Him.
So this is what Allah
Not
replied.
you worship
This is what Allah replied. I don't want what you want. As I said again, so once you have entered into the Hussainiyya, once I have entered in and become a citizen of this country, once wherever I've entered in, now I have to follow the laws. Yeah. If I didn't want to follow, why did I enter into the first place?
And that's why, subhanAllah, and this is the most important point, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those closest to His heart, those who He loves so much in the Quran, He calls them an abid. Because the true abid, and to reach that high level of being a true slave to Allah, you worship Him the way He wants you to worship Him, not the way that we want to worship Him.
Therefore, complete freedom is found in complete restriction under the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
You know, I just want to add on to what Sayyid Ali just said about abid. So, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Al-Khidr as a abid salih. Now, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, when he refers to, for example, Abbas, Assalamu alayka أيها العبد الصالح المطيع لله ولرسوله ولأمير المؤمنين ولفاطمة الزهراء وللحسن والحسين. Peace be upon you, O slave, how would you translate Salih? Righteous slave. The one who is obedient to Allah and His Messenger.
Therefore, when we look at these Ansar of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, we see this. They took their freedom, the biggest sacrifice, the biggest thing I can give is not my clothing or my wealth, it's my free will. And they placed it in the hands of Hussain alayhi salam. And they said, my free will, I give to you. You want me to do this, I'll do it. And that's why you read the narrations that when it came to the salah of Imam Hussain alayhi salam on the day of Ashura, there were certain people that would surround him. An arrow would be shot towards him. He would put his face in front to protect Hussain alayhi salam. They gave their freedom. And that's why they were the free. The free is that person who realizes where I need to be restrict myself and be completely subservient. To whom? As you said, I shouldn't be the slave to the dunya. Freedom is the slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With the Ansar, the ashab of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he who Imam Hussain alayhi salam himself called the free was of course Hur. Hur ibn Yazid, the qualities we found in Hur, of those was that he stopped to ponder. If I wish to be free in this world, I need to ponder on these realities. Reflect on these realities. He says, I saw myself in between Jannah and Nar, between heaven and hell. The best of warriors in all of the part of Arabia that they lived, Hur. They said he was shaking. When asked, Hur, what's going on here? He He said, I can see myself in between this decision. Allah has given me this freedom. It's now the time for me to choose. Do I want to be the slave of this side or that side? We are told he takes a white handkerchief, he ties it around his hands for surrender, and he goes with his son towards Imam Hussain alayhi salam. When Imam Hussain alayhi salam comes to sees Hur, Abu al-Fadl Abbas first comes out, the others come out. What do you want? He said, ask Imam Hussain alayhi salam, is there any way in which he can forgive me? This reply is a reply that only an Imam Ma'soom could give. He said, tell him I've already forgiven him. I've already forgiven him. When then it comes for the time for Hur to go to the battlefield, the history narrates, lengthy narration, that first his son goes. When it comes for the time for Hur to go, and he falls onto the ground on the battlefield, and he calls out Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam Hussain alayhi salam comes running towards him. He mentions that you are Hur in this world and the next. When you become the slave of Allah, you are free in this world and the next. And then Imam Hussain alayhi salam takes his head and places it in his lap. All of the Ansar were blessed that their heads were in the lap of Hussain alayhi salam. But our salutations go on Hussain alayhi salam, whose head was there without any lap to be placed in. If we can hear some lines of poetry about these Ansar who sacrificed their lives for Hussain alayhi salam.
Ajarakumullah. When the Ansar went into the battlefield one by one, after Salat al-Dhuhr by 1 hour, Imam Hussain stood on the plains of Karbala alone, shouting, Habib, Zuhair, Burair, why is it that I call upon you and you do not answer? Or is it that death has become between us? هذا الرموح بفادة ثنى وهذا الخيل صدر راض رضانا هذا الخيل صدره رضرض النية وهذا وذاك بالهند موذر والله وهذا وذاك بالهند موذر. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين.
اللهم صل على محمد.